Hello and welcome back to the channel. Ninja Turtle here, and today we got something special. We are finally dipping away from comic book stuff. We're dipping away from anime stuff. We're back in the video game territory. We got a Cammy, the X-Men versus Street Fighter slash X-Men, or excuse me, Street Fighter Alpha version of Cammy here, and I am finally glad to have this done. The mistakes were made. Some things could turn out better than others. I may make changes in the future. I haven't decided all that yet, but I still very much like how she turned out, and we're going to get into it. So you'll see what I did and why I did it. Maybe be more specific, but you'll at least know the deets, even if you won't know how I did the deets. But we're going to start at the bottom and talk about her feet, her patas, the toes and the boots. Really, it's just the boots. So these boots are coming from a Miss Marvel, the Gamerverse Miss Marvel boots. So the lower legs, the actually, you know what? No, I take that back. The actual feet are from X23. So the actual feet themselves are the same ones are on the X23 figure, which is not focusing very well, but there you go. You can see that a little bit. These are the exact same ones. All I did was sand off the detail of the laces on the shoes, but those are the same shoes on an X23 figure. And for the most part, they're not the exact same legs, no, but you can see they're the same, type of, where it's two different pieces, it swivels there. So the boots themselves are from the Gamerverse Miss Marvel, and then also again sanded off the laces because she doesn't have laces on her boots. So sanded those down a little bit smooth, but all of the cloth ripples of those boots are still there. And so all of this leg is from the Gamerverse Miss Marvel, and then this is from the boots themselves are from the X23 here. So with that said, you can see there is a height difference, but it's not a staggering difference between the Cammy and the X23. So my idea is that I wanted to have the figure not be this small, because this is kind of a scale of 5'1", 5'2". Cammy is 5'4", and Cammy is 135 pounds. If we're going with her Street Fighter 5 stats, if you're going for some pre-Street Fighter 5 stats, yes, I looked all this stuff up. It's important to me. She used to be 5'1" and 100 pounds. So she actually would be about this build. If you were going to go for like original Street Fighter 2 Cammy, she would be about this build here. But if we're going for Street Fighter 5 Cammy, she's taller, she's heavier, she's fuller. So my idea with going forward with Cammy is that I wanted to make sure that she was her current self, her current Street Fighter 5 self, just wearing her old costumes. I could go and make her look more like the Alpha side, and maybe she's still 5'4", but a lot thinner. She was about 100 pounds in that at that time frame. So she would be a little slimmer in the leg, but still about this height. Maybe, maybe it's not perfect, but there's other options and other ways to configure the body molds that are available to you to make that a little slimmer, maybe a longer torso, because that's probably the most divisive thing about what I've done, is that I'm using the exact same type of torso that is on this X23. Is the same style. However, there are modifications. It's the same mold. But let's go back to the thighs before we get into that. The thighs are from the... Actually, I don't know if they're from this figure in particular. Actually, no, I think I know. So this is the Blink, right? The Age of Apocalypse Blink. The thighs are pretty much the same, but I think I actually used the Psylocke, the regular Psylocke figure from the Apocalypse Wave, which has the exact same legs as these, but I think that these are actually Psylocke legs. Either way, this is way more accessible. Buy this instead of wasting your Psylocke. I have my reasons for foddering my Psylocke, but I think these are Psylocke legs. But either way, those are on this kind of torso, but normally that would not fit in here. It would not fit on that pin that's in there. So I actually cracked this open. And actually, another full disclosure, I didn't use an X23 torso. This one is a torso from Magic. From Magic. The Walgreens Magic. But again, same stuff. Cracked that torso open for that pin that's in the inside and swapped it out with a Kate Bishop style pin. So a pin from a body mold like this, right? The pin that's on the inside of there is now here on this body mold. Hope you can follow with that. If not, I'm going to do it a million times in the future. So maybe in a future video you can figure it out, or just rewind it. Again, this mold, but swapped the pin so that these legs would fit on there. All right, so now that we got that going for us, we got this. These legs are much bigger than these. They're longer, so she's taller because this part, all of that is going to match up. But once you get to the knee up, that's where things are different. So these legs are different, and then the pin is longer, so that makes her hips wider than these hips here. So she's a lot more curvier. And last modification would be on the back side, because Cammy wouldn't be Cammy if she didn't have that going for her. So I sculpted the booty. I'll zoom in a little bit there. The painting was not perfect. I wish I actually had more flesh tone in there so we can make that leotard disappear. But yeah, you can see the butts are a lot different in comparison. So again, wider hips, and then I sculpted with epoxy sculpt to make the butt bigger in comparison to that. So but other than that, it is the same mold for that lower torso. And while we're back here, so you can see the back as well, cut out with the flesh tone there. And then you can see some of the details on the arm gauntlet bangle thing. But hey, let's talk about these braids, because we're here with that as well. So the braids are a lot of things. So in general, these braids come from a Valkyrie figure. The Hasbro Marvel Legends Valkyrie has two braids, one on each side of her head, and from here basically to there. No, I did not, and I don't recommend that you buy a bunch of Valkyries. If you're going to make this, I don't recommend that you buy a bunch of Valkyries and cut the hair off and glue them all together to make her braids. That's essentially what I did, but it's not actually what I did. So one reason why I don't recommend that is, one, that's very expensive to do that. Two, the hair quality, the type of plastic that Hasbro used to use on their hair back then is much different than what they use now. It's a lot softer now. So gluing hair pieces together now is a lot easier than it was back then, because that hair was very stiff on those older Marvel Legends compared to a newer one like this X23 here. So again, what did I do? I actually copied that hair that is on the Valkyrie. So I put it in a mold, and I made a cast and used resin, my own resin, to make copies of the small piece of braid. So basically from here to here is like what I copied. And then I made multiple copies and glued those together. So it's a completely different plastic than what Hasbro is using. It's soft, it is a little pliable. You know, you can see it does bend and move and stuff like that. It's not hard sculpted. I'm not going to do like a full bend, because you can either break it or because it is smaller pieces that are glued together, I don't want to bend the wrong spots and then it'll be where the glue is and it'll come apart. But the glue is on there strong enough that it's holding it up, and that it is flexible enough that it can move with turning her head. It won't be an issue terribly if it gets bent a little bit. That's the whole point. So it is a separate resin. It is a whole nother thing there. So do I recommend that you do that if you're good at making molds and casting and all of that stuff? Then go for it. If not, then I don't really have any other solution. But I definitely don't recommend that you just buy a bunch of Valkyries and try gluing that together, because that may not work. I'm not saying for sure that it won't, but that's not what I'm recommending. But I was able to get this done, and I'm very happy that I was able to make these braids, because that opens up a whole lot of doors for future Cammies, because I can make more Cammies now, as well as other characters with braids, whether they're in their heads or they're dangling like this or whatever it is. I have a lot of characters that need braids, so I have that as an option going forward, and I'm very happy to have it. So I don't need X23 anymore. She's done. Get her out of here. As far as the arms go, the arms themselves are just regular arms like on a Kate Bishop like this. Nothing fancy there. I didn't want to use those arms though. Unfortunately, these are a little bit more muscular. I would have liked to have used those. Sorry about that. I would have liked to have used those, but they don't fit on this upper torso. The upper torso here is a Lady Deadpool. So you can see all of that is just a Lady Deadpool top. With the sculpted on tie, and then you can kind of see, and it's very, very hard, maybe get this a little closer, you can kind of see I got some shoulders and like the little collar on there that is sculpted on there as well. It's very tough to see because of how the paint you kind of covered up all of the sculpting lines, but it is there. And then another thing that's very hard to see, maybe you see a little bit of a blue. So this color is largely a turquoise color, but then there's stripes on there that are blue turquoise. I didn't want to sculpt like actual lines in her body, because that's just like I would have to cover her entire torso with sculpt and then cut in lines. That's just too much, and it would possibly affect how good this figure would look normally. And then also it would be really bad on her arms and her torso or lower torso. So they're just painted on, but instead of painting dark lines, I went with like a similar color. So it's turquoise and then blue turquoise for the stripes. It doesn't show up very well. So that's kind of one regret. You could go with black lines if you really wanted those lines to show up a little stronger. Maybe that's what I recommend if you do that instead of what I did. But you can see a little bit of those lines on there. This light is just not great enough to make them show. Going back to her arms though, you can see I have these, whatever her gauntlets are or whatever it is. I don't know what to call that technically, but they're all there. So one fancy thing about this is, see if we can get that to focus. Pull that a little bit there. So yeah, so a lot of this, we'll start with the hand. The hand is got epoxy sculpt on all of this, so all the details, the little bumps and stuff, that's all epoxy sculpted there, and then just painted red, and then the fingerless part is flesh tone. So this bottom part of the gauntlet on her wrist, that is plastic. That is plastic that I cut into a circle to fit around the arm. So again, just take like a regular arm and not these, but just as an example, a regular arm, and I took plastic and cut it into a circle to go around the wrist and glued it on, instead of using epoxy sculpt around the wrist, because the reason why I didn't do that, I've had issue with that, because if I'm taking off or putting on a hand and it's sculpted on with epoxy sculpt, once I put the hand in there, it'll crack. But if it's plastic, the plastic will just expand like it normally would, because the rest of the arm is plastic. So it makes taking off and putting on hands a lot easier. But just the bottom part is around the wrist on both sides is plastic. Everything else up here going upward, this little grate, whatever you call it, and then the circular part on the upper part, that is epoxy sculpt, and that was just easier to do with sculpt than trying to make that part out of plastic. And then this little back piece right here, that is plastic glued onto the epoxy sculpt. Because only did that because if she were to fall over or something like that, and then if that was epoxy sculpt, that would break. But it being plastic, it's going to be a lot more sturdy. So the same thing was done on the other side, other than that little piece that's hanging off. That's plastic because I don't believe that's supposed to be there, so I didn't put it there. But it's the same idea over there. Got the black armband, yellow tie, like I said, sculpted on. Back to her face. So the head itself is a white rabbit head, and luckily, because I am very bad at painting eyes, I did not have to paint the eyes. White rabbit already had blue eyes, and I used like a genuine white rabbit head, so I did not need to paint her eyes. I just painted everything else. So they got the scar on her face, the eyes, I just painted around all of the eyeliner and eyelashes stuff, and it turned out pretty good. Not really a whole lot of issues. Come on, focus for me. No, too close, too close. All right, but yeah, not too many issues in painting in there. So hopefully when I do more Cammys, I'll just continue to use white rabbit and not need to paint her eyes, and her eyes will be good. Pink lipstick. The hair color was a custom mix using Angelus leather acrylic paint, and it turned out really good. It is pale yellow, yellow, and light brown, just to get a little golden color. Also, the turquoise color is all of this on her body. That is also Angelus acrylic leather paint. It was the color that I wanted, so I just went ahead and just used it instead of trying to mix something else together. And as far as the hat, everything, excuse me, actually her whole head, her hair, I should say, is all sculpted on with epoxy sculpt, and then the hat is also sculpted on with epoxy sculpt, and then this little piece of hair coming off of her is plastic from just scraps I had laying around. I think it's actually from a Polaris cape. Like I cut up a Polaris cape a while ago, and I think I just had some scraps, and that's just a little piece that was hanging around, and I just like, hey, that'll be perfect for Cammy. Boom, glued it right on and gave it some paint. And lastly, the only real thing of note with her hair is like when I make that braid, I glued it onto, like I sculpted her hair first going backwards, and then glued the braid onto the back of her skull. Once that dried, I took more epoxy sculpt and sculpted over the braid so that it's like in there more securely, and that it looks more like flush with the rest of her head, the rest of her hair, and that's about it. So a whole lot of techniques in here. Really happy how it turned out. I wish I made her hair, like the sides of her head, a little bit bigger on the hair, and maybe went darker on the lines for the pinstripes, or you know, whatever the fabric. But other than that, I think she turned out good. The proportions aren't the best. I wouldn't say that this came out perfectly, but I think as far as height goes, I think it works really well. Again, seeing her next to the X23, like she should be taller than X23, but not by much. She should be bigger than X23, but not like Juggernaut or anything like that, obviously. But she should be bigger, and she is, but she's not super tall. And I'm gonna have more Street Fighter stuff in my next video. I don't want to do it now, but you'll see a height difference in that video with that character, and see how that works out. And of course, with future stuff going on. I actually have not done this comparison. Let me grab her really quick. This is the first time I'm actually putting these two together. And this is my Jill Valentine. Let's put her on this side. Let's see. Alright, so my custom Jill Valentine that I made a year ago, and Cammy. So you can see the height here. And yeah, that's okay. I feel like the Jill is too tall, but Cammy's supposed to be 5'4", and Jill's supposed to be 5'5". And after I made this, I felt I made her too tall, and there's some things I would change. And I am going to be making another Jill Valentine relatively soon, and it will have a different build overall. But we'll see. Like, I'm still going to kind of go for this height, but I love seeing the difference. Like, Cammy has freaking legs, man. Jill, a little slimmer, a little taller, and just seeing them two next to each other, this looks good. I enjoy this quite a bit. Stay tuned. I have another Street Fighter character custom that I have finished, so there will be a new video going up very soon. Let me know what you think of this Cammy. If you're interested in this Jill, I have a whole video on the channel for that, so go check that out. Make sure you leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel for more videos, share this video within your communities and your friends and families, because hey, it's Cammy, you know. I'm definitely going to make more Cammys. I'm going to make the Street Fighter V Cammy and Street Fighter 2/Street Fighter 4 Cammy. You know, they're relatively the same. And who knows, there might be some other Cammys that are in that Street Fighter 5 outfits that I might try to dabble in. And I'm definitely going to make more Street Fighter characters. Like I said, I have another one coming up, and we will even attempt to make some boys at some point. But for the most part, girls. So stay tuned, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.